Arnold Bergstrom eased his old Volvo onto the E4 as snow thickened over the fields between Uppsala and Stockholm, wipers thumping a steady beat while the dashboard showed -9 degrees Celsius. His phone buzzed on the mount, a message from his neighbor Karen. "Policin' at the Nilssons again. Domestic trouble. Thought of your worries." He stared at the text long enough for the car behind to flash its lights, then rolled forward with a small nod, feeling that tight knot he had carried since Marta died 6 months earlier. Thanksgiving wasn't Swedish, but Marta's American mother had loved it, so they kept it each year. Candles, simple food, small forgiveness. 2 gift bags rode beside him, new hockey gloves for his grandson Amos, and a stack of superhero comics because, as Marta used to say, nobody gets too old for small heroes. Led Zeppelin crackled on the radio, low and heavy. He dialed Linnea, his daughter. No answer. He tried again at the Sollentuna exit. Voicemail. He told himself they were busy in the kitchen. When the fuel light blinked, he pulled into a station, filled the tank, bought coffee and peppermints Amos liked, and checked the time. 15:05. The road was glassy now, traffic crawling behind hazard lights. He kept both hands on the wheel and his speed just under the safe line. He let his mind count clear facts to stay calm. Linnea's blue townhouse sat in a quiet cul-de-sac. Wilhelm's black SUV would be in the drive. Amos would be tall at the door, pretending not to be eager about presents. He remembered summer on Dale-Elven, Amos grinning over a pike, and after, a yellow bruise on the boy's arm that had not looked like a fall. He had asked gently. Amos had said he was clumsy. Linnea had said teenagers exaggerate. The memory sat wrong now, the way a chair wobbles even when you think you fixed it. He turned into Linnea's street. Windows glowed behind lace curtains, small paper stars hung for Advent, and smoke curled from chimneys. He slowed, saw the blue 2-story with white trim, and let out a breath. Music drifted faintly from inside, the good kind for holidays. He parked behind the SUV and let the engine tick down. The first thing he noticed was how bright the porch lights were. The second was the shape on the top step. A boy, thin, still, no coat. Shorts and a t-shirt in air that would bite skin within minutes. Snow dusted his hair and shoulders like salt. Arnold's hand opened the door before he told it to. The cold hit hard, a hard, clean slap, and he crossed the path in 3 careful steps so he wouldn't slip. "Amos," he said, not loud, just clear. The boy lifted his head. His lips were blue, his cheeks mottled red, and his teeth chattered so hard the word came out broken. "Morfar." Arnold stripped off his wool coat and wrapped it around the boy's shoulders, pulling the collar up to his ears. The heat of the coat meant little. The boy's shivers were deep, the kind that come after hours, not minutes. Behind them, through double-glazed glass, warmth showed itself as candles on a table and a flicker of someone laughing. He tried the door handle. Locked. He tried the bell. Music continued. Nobody came. He kept his voice level. "How long?" Amos's eyes flicked away. "Since 11, he said, the words scraping. Arnold felt the answer land like iron. He lifted Amos gently under the arm, guided him down the steps, and steered him toward the Volvo where heat and seat warmers waited. As he settled the boy and turned the blower to full, he glanced once more at the bright, closed door, at the pretty wreath, at the neat boots lined inside the hall. The house looked perfect from the street. It did not feel like a safe place. Something was wrong here, and whatever it was had been wrong for longer than today. Arnold turned the heater to full and slipped the wool blanket from his emergency kit over Amos's shoulders, tucking it tight while the vents blew hot air against the boy's shaking hands. He rubbed each finger carefully, the way the factory nurse had taught him years ago, watching for pale patches that did not pink back up. The skin was slow, but alive. "Tell me what happened," he said, keeping his voice even. Amos stared at the steaming windshield. "I was basting the turkey. I forgot the timer. The skin went dark. Wilhelm came in and shouted. He said I ruined the day. He said I had to sit outside until I understood responsibility." Arnold checked the clock. 15:20. 4 hours and more at -9 degrees Celsius. "Your mother?" he asked. Amos flinched. She tried to say it was enough. He told her it was between him and me. He locked the door. The boy's teeth knocked together at the last word. Arnold opened a pack of peppermints, broke a piece of chocolate from the glove box, and pressed them into cold hands. He made the boy sip water, small and steady, then watched the color come back by shades. A slow anger settled in him, the kind that does not shout, It thinks. "Has this happened before?" he asked. Amos nodded without lifting his eyes. "Garage 3 nights last month for leaving a glass in the sink. Basement in January for a bad grade. He says silent dinners teach respect. I can't speak unless spoken to. He times my showers. He takes my phone at 7. The words sounded rehearsed, like rules posted on an invisible wall. Arnold felt a click inside, pieces sliding into place. July's bruise, the too careful yes sir boy on the pier, the quick glance at doors. He reached for his own phone, then stopped. "Amos, I want to take a photo of you as you are now. For proof. Do you agree?" The boy swallowed and nodded once. Arnold took 2 photos, the blue lips, the bare legs dusted with snow, and one of the porch with the locked door, the pretty wreath, the untouched doorbell, the Volvo's dashboard showing time and temperature. He sent the photos to his neighbor Karen with a short line. "If I need a witness, you saw this message today." Then he shut off the car and turned in his seat so he faced Amos fully. "You are 18, he said. "You can choose where to live. If he tries to stop you, the police will hear about this step. We will retrieve your things and go. If he calls it kidnapping, we will show them truth." Amos's eyes flicked to the house, where warm light moved behind the curtains and a shadow crossed the hallway like a slow sail. "He gets worse when challenged," he whispered. "He will get louder," Arnold said, "but we will get clearer." He laid out the plan in simple steps so the boy could hold it. They would go to the door together. Arnold would speak first. Amos would stay behind him, coat on, blanket off to move. They would collect documents, ID cards, school papers, bank letter, clothes, the guitar picks in the tin, anything that mattered and fit. They would not argue. They would not search for perfect. They would leave. If Wilhelm blocked the stairs or the hall, Arnold would call the police from the threshold and read the temperature, the time, the facts. The heater clicked as it idled, a small metronome. Amos's shiver eased from violent to fine. "What if he stands close?" the boy asked. "You step behind me," Arnold said. "I have the words I need." He did not say them out loud, but he felt them settle in his chest, 6 small stones ready for a clean throw. He switched off the engine, pocketed the keys, and opened his door to the bite of wind. "Stay with my shoulder," he said, and together they crossed the short path toward the bright locked door that had kept warmth for some and winter for one. Arnold knocked once, then pressed the bell and waited while wind pushed dry snow across the porch tiles. Music and low laughter continued inside, but no one came, and the locked door felt like an answer in itself. So he set his boot beside the latch, leaned his weight forward, and the frame cracked with a flat sound that made Amos flinch. Warm air rolled over them as the door swung wide to a bright hallway and a dining room dressed like a magazine page. White cloth, candles, crystal, a second turkey shining on a platter, where Wilhelm stood at the head as if on a small stage, knife laid down very carefully, jaw hard, eyes quick, and Linnea froze beside him with a serving spoon dripping brown gravy onto the cloth. For 1 second, the room held still, like a photograph, and in that second, Arnold saw what was wrong. The good light did not reach the doorway where Amos stood blue-lipped inside a coat too big for him. It stopped at the edge of the table and stayed with the plates. Wilhelm found his voice first. "You have no right to enter," he said in that clean host tone men use when they want to sound like reason. "This is my home." Arnold did not raise his voice. He pointed at Amos's bare legs under the coat and said 6 words that landed like a dropped tool. "Heard him again? Answer to me." Faces went pale because the words were simple and could not be argued. Linnea's mouth moved but made no sound. A fork hit a plate somewhere, and the little clink sounded loud. Arnold stepped in far enough to keep the cold from Amos and stood square in the hall. "Since 11, he said, letting the number sit. -9 degrees? 4 hours. The candle flames wavered in a draft that came from the door he had opened and the lie he had broken. Wilhelm tried a small smile. "He is 18, he said, palms out. He needed time to think about consequences. He could have come in if he chose. Linnea turned to him with a tiny shake of her head, a motion like a trapped bird. Arnold took his phone from his pocket, not to call yet, but to show he could, and the room's tension changed by half an inch. "We can ask the police," he said. "We can ask social services, or we can keep it simple." He looked at Amos, not at Wilhelm. "Upstairs. Pack your things. Documents first. A bag of clothes. Guitar picks in the tin. Anything that matters and fits. We leave in 5 minutes. Amos moved because a plan felt like heat. His steps were light and quick on the stairs. Wilhelm shifted to block the hallway by a quarter step. Arnold did not touch him. He took 1 pace closer and filled the space with his body and the steady look of an old man who had spent a life lifting heavy things and was not afraid of another. "Stand back," he said, flat and calm. Wilhelm lifted his chin. "This is kidnapping." "This is rescue," Arnold said, and the 2 simple sentences hung in the air like signs. He kept talking, steady and precise, so that the story could not slide. The time on his dash, the temperature, the photos already sent to a witness, the locked bell that no one answered while a boy shook outside. "If you want the police here, I will dial and wait," he said. "But understand that they will enter this warm room and see his lips blue and hear what door was locked." Linnea made a sound then, a small, torn sound that belonged to the past 3 years. She put down the spoon. "Wilhelm," she said, and the name did not belong to her mouth anymore. Footsteps returned. Amos came down with a duffel, the old sweatshirt, a folder of papers, and a tin that rattled softly. He looked at his mother, then at Arnold. "Ready," he said, and his voice had a shape now. Wilhelm moved again, but only his shoulders moved. His feet stayed where they were. Arnold stepped back, keeping the doorway clear, and guided Amos past with a hand to the boy's elbow. "You leave this house, boy. Do not come back," Wilhelm said, the tone stepping down into threat. "We heard you," Arnold answered without turning, and the 3 of them, old man, cold boy, silent mother, crossed the hall to the ruined threshold, where winter waited honest and sharp. Outside, the porch light still burned like nothing had happened. Inside, the candles flickered at a table set for thanks that had forgotten what the word meant. Arnold pulled the door to with a firm hand and felt, for the first time all day, the balance of the world shift by a small but measurable degree. Arnold's flat in Uppsala received them like a warm hand, radiators hissing softly, the scent of strong coffee and the faint lavender that Märta had tucked into the linen chest months before she died. And he moved with quiet speed. Blanket over Amos on the sofa, kettle on, wool socks from the basket, a pan heating for meatballs with brown sauce while potatoes boiled, and a jar of lingonberry waited on the table. He watched color return to the boy's face in careful degrees, checked fingers for feeling the way the factory nurse once taught him, and only when the shaking eased did he ask for the story from the start, keeping his voice even so the facts would come. Amos told it slowly, like lifting heavy boxes and setting them down. Silent dinners where he could not speak unless spoken to. Showers timed with the bathroom clock. Nights in the garage for small mistakes. The basement in January. The locked door today at 11 when the turkey skin went dark. Arnold let each piece sit where it landed. Nothing was rushed, nothing dismissed. He set the plates down and they ate in steady bites. Meatballs soft, sauce rich, potatoes breaking with steam. And the boy's shoulders eased, the kitchen window fogging while snow brushed the glass. The knock at the door came hard and official, 3 raps that made Amos flinch. Arnold stood, placed a hand on the boy's shoulder in passing, and opened to 2 uniformed officers with wet caps, breath white in the hall, and behind them, a step back in the snow, Wilhelm with a stiff face and Linnea with a small one. "Policeman," the older officer said, "we need to speak with you about a complaint." Arnold stepped aside, not far, just enough, and kept himself between Amos and the cold. "My grandson is here," he said, "by choice." The younger officer scanned the room and nodded once as he took out a notepad. Wilhelm began to talk in quick, clean lines. Broken door, old man, kidnapping, influence, and the older officer lifted a palm. "Sir, we will hear everyone, one at a time." He turned to Amos. "Did you come here because you wanted to?" Amos's voice was quiet but steady. "Yes." "Were you made to sit outside today as punishment?" "Yes." "How long?" "Since 11. The older officer looked at Arnold. "Temperature?" Arnold turned his phone so the locked photo showed the porch wreath, the dashboard time, and -9 degrees Celsius in the corner. "He was in a t-shirt and shorts," he said. "I have pictures." Wilhelm tried a small smile that showed teeth but not warmth. "He could have come inside if he had apologized," he said. "It was a lesson." Linnea's eyes flicked to the boy, then to the floor. The younger officer wrote without looking up. "Was the door locked, ma'am?" The older officer asked gently. There was a long breath, And then Linnea nodded. Yes, he told me to keep it locked. The room changed shape with that sentence. The older officer stepped half a pace toward Wilhelm. Sir, please stand back. Wilhelm did not move. The officer continued in the same calm tone people use to carry breakable things. You are suspected of unlawful coercion and ill treatment. You are not obliged to say anything, but what you say may be used as evidence. He reached for Wilhelm's wrist, not rough, simply certain. Wilhelm pulled his arm away and spoke in threats. Lawyers, reputation, ruin. But the words slipped on the tile like wet boots. Linnea did not look at him. She looked only at her son with an expression that belonged to a different year. The officers led Wilhelm down the stairwell, his voice shrinking in the snow, and the door closed on their footsteps. For a moment, nothing moved. Then Linnea sagged into a chair and cried in deep, hard sobs that had waited 3 winters to be allowed. Amos went to her, dropped to one knee, and took her hands in both of his. Mama, he said, and the words sounded new in the room. Arnold poured coffee, added sugar the way Marta used to for shock, and set the cup where Linnea could reach it. Now we tell the truth to everyone who asks, he said in simple steps, and then we rest. The radiators kept their soft hiss, the snow pressed its face to the glass, and the kitchen, with its 2 plates and a 3rd cup cooling, felt like a place that had chosen its side. By the next morning, the flat had a routine again. Arnold phoned social services to report what he found, then took Amos to the clinic where a nurse checked his temperature, hands, and cheeks, wrote risk of mild hypothermia, and photographed the faint bruises along the jaw. After that, they went to the police station where the older officer recorded a full statement, copied Arnold's porch photos with the time and -9 degrees Celsius, and told them a caseworker would follow up. 2 days later, a brown letter from the district court arrived with a temporary protection order that said Wilhelm could not contact Amos or Linnea, not by phone, not by door, not through others. Linnea moved 2 suitcases into Arnold's spare room and began sleeping, really sleeping, for the first time in months. Amos kept to small, steady tasks at first, washing dishes, fixing a loose chair leg, stacking wood, and then returned to school after a week, meeting a counselor on Fridays at the youth clinic to talk through rules that harm, as the counselor called them. In January, the hearing at the Tingsrätt came quickly and quietly. The prosecutor read the facts. The officer confirmed the locked door and the temperature. Linnea told the judge her part, and the judge extended the protection order for a year and added mandatory classes for Wilhelm. They left the courthouse into sharp winter light and said little on the bus home. The decision felt less like victory than like the ground finally holding. The house shifted to fit 3 people. Arnold labeled shelves so no one had to ask where things lived. Linnea took an afternoon shift at the library and started bringing home old novels that smelled of dust and calm. And Amos set up a desk in the warm basement with a lamp, a corkboard, and a map of Stockholm, where he pinned a small star over KTH as a joke and a wish. On a Tuesday in late February, an envelope with no return address lay inside the door. Arnold turned it over twice before opening it at the kitchen table. It was not a threat. It was a letter from a foundation that sponsored technical students. They had read Amos's guidance counselor's note about resilience and wanted to cover housing and a small stipend if KTH accepted him. No one cheered. They just stood in a small circle around the letter as if it might fly away. Then Amos folded it carefully and slid it under a magnet on the fridge. A week later, a different envelope came with a blue crest and the words Kungliga Tekniska Högskolan. Arnold set 3 mugs on the counter before Amos opened it, and the boy read the first line twice, then a 3rd time. Accepted. Autumn start. Welcome. They planned in clear steps. Call the bank to open a student account, buy a used laptop from Blockit, check the dorm list, make a budget with food and travel written in round numbers. In the evenings, Arnold cooked simple food, soups, omelets, fried herring on bread, and Linnea learned to bake cinnamon buns the way Marta had, testing the cardamom by scent and laugh. Small, uneasy things still happened. Twice an unknown number rang and hung up when Arnold answered. Once a folded note was found under the wiper of Linnea's old bicycle. It had no words, only a crossmark. Arnold photographed it and mailed the image to the officer with the case number. The officer replied, "Logged. Keep doors locked. Call if anything else." They kept the chain on the door and the hallway light on after dark. The mystery did not grow. It just lingered like a draft from an old window, noticed and managed. March came with wet pavements and birds adjusting their voices. Arnold and Amos turned the garden beds with short spades, working the soil into soft lines, while Linnea brought out coffee in thick mugs. Inside, the mantel carried new photos beside Marta's. Amos with a guitar at the community center show, Linnea at the library wearing a name badge, Arnold in his winter cap grinning awkwardly. One evening, Jakob knocked to ask if Amos could rehearse for the spring concert. Arnold watched the boy grab his old sweatshirt, guitar picks in the rattling tin, and step into the stairwell without looking over his shoulder. That small motion told more than any letter. At night, when the unknown number did not ring, the flat felt settled. The radiators kept their soft hiss. The key on the hook gleamed like a promise. They were not finished with courts or forms or careful habits. They were simply moving forward in order, one clear action at a time, carrying the day's mysteries lightly, and laying them down where the facts could see them. April settled over Uppsala with wet pavements and pale evening light, and on a Friday, Arnold took the bus with Linnea to the community center, while Amos walked there with Jakob and a guitar in a soft case. The hall smelled of floor polish and coffee, folding chairs lined in neat rows, and a paper sign said Spring Concert in careful marker. Arnold chose a front seat and folded his big hands, feeling a calm he had not trusted in months. When Amos came on stage, taller under the lights, he looked once into the audience as if checking a compass, then played 2 songs he had learned from old records in Arnold's cupboard, and his voice, clear, not loud, carried the room into the same key. Linnea's smile had edges again, the good kind, and when the applause rose, she pressed her fingers to her mouth, as if to hold a small cry in place. Afterward, they stepped into the mild night, the sky still holding a hint of blue, and walked home the slow way past the river, where thin ice drifted like torn paper. Arnold listened to the sound of their shoes and thought of how winter had kept bad secrets, and spring was telling them in daylight. Half a block from the flat, his phone buzzed with unknown, and he let it ring out. A minute later, a voicemail icon blinked. Inside, under the kitchen lamp, he tapped play with the volume low. There was no voice, only 3 breaths and a click. He saved the file, emailed it to the officer with the case number, and wrote, "Time 21:12, no words." The reply came faster than he expected. "Logged. Patrol in area tonight. Call 112 if vehicle loiters." He locked the door chain and poured tea, and they spoke of ordinary things instead. The way the second song had landed, whether the guitar needed new strings, how a train to Stockholm next week might be cheap if they chose the early one. Near 10 o'clock, a car idled on the street below, engine low and steady. Arnold stood at the window with the curtain barely open and wrote the first 3 letters of the plate on a notepad. He called the non-emergency line, gave the letters and the time, and listened to the calm voice say, "Thank you, we will send a car." A patrol rolled past within minutes. The idling car moved off as if it had only been thinking about directions. 10 minutes later, the officer phoned back, delivery driver waiting for a text. "No link to your case. We will keep passing." The mystery settled, not solved like a riddle, but sized correctly. Small, noted, watched. They slept with the hallway light on and woke to a Saturday that felt new. After breakfast, they took the early train to Stockholm and walked from Odenplan to the KTH campus, where red brick buildings held the quiet of libraries and plans. Amos read the names on doors like they were trail markers, and when they reached a small courtyard, he stood very still, as if measuring the space where his next months would fit. They ate simple sandwiches on a bench, planned dorm linens and a used bicycle, and drew a short list in Arnold's notebook. Housing office, student account, laptop from Blockit, lock for the bike, 2 spare bowls for the basement room so late-night noodles would not steal dinner dishes. On the ride back, fields flashed by, brown and ready, and Linnea leaned her head against the cool window and dozed the way people do when the body at last believes it is safe. In the evening, Arnold warmed a pot of soup and slid cinnamon buns from the oven the way Marta had taught him. Golden, gentle with cardamom. And the 3 of them ate at the small table while the radiators ticked like a metronome for quiet days. When the unknown number did not call, no one mentioned it. They did not need to. Amos took his guitar to the sofa and played Softer Than the Night Outside, and Linnea sorted photographs into a little album she wanted to call Recipes and Truth. Marta's handwriting on one page and a family picture on the next. Arnold stepped out to the balcony for a breath of the cold that remained and looked over the dark courtyard where a single lamp made a circle on the paving stones. He thought of 6 words said at a broken door and understood they were not a threat anymore, but a promise kept. You heard him again? You answer to me, said once and proven by every clear step since. He went back in, closed the balcony gently, and set the latch. The kettle clicked. The house held. Outside, April kept thawing the last of winter's hardness, and inside, they moved forward in order. Arrive, protect, tell the truth, stay.